Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's tech tip. The first tech tip was about the bats or a wire tool and an extractor slash glass rebel slash any reciprocating tool. This week we're going to talk about cold knives. Cold knife is the go-to standard. Um, it's getting less and less in the industry. It's a very physically demanding tool. I'll never forget the first time the gentleman that was training me, Scott Rice, he stuck the cold knife in. He was like, "Go ahead and pull that across." And I was like shaking and turning purple and like just and it busted through the top of the glass. So there is a technique to using this. So you can see, not sure if you could see or not, but it's beveled edges. This is the Wizard blade style. This one is actually Ultra Wiz. These blades have seen many, many, many uses. You get the sharp beveled edges here, and then it's actually flat along that surface there. Hopefully that's focusing in. It's actually flat. And always remember with your tools, anytime you're using a tool, the flat side goes toward the glass. Why that matters with a cold knife is when you're using a cold knife, you're going to slip the point under the edge of the glass. And with a cable knife or any of the other knives we're going to talk about, if you're pulling it towards yourself, take the top of the knife and slightly angle that away. What that's going to do is it's going to expose this sharp edge and guide it up towards the glass. And then that's going to make it very easy to release from the glass. So you push it back and then you pull it towards you. And if you're pushing it away from you, you want to take the top of that handle and tip it slightly back to you. So it does the same thing. So that toe rides up against the glass and then guides, but you don't want too far because then you'll start digging into the glass. It's a very, very, very feel of where you need to go from here. This is too much. It's going to dig up and you're just going to push against the glass. But like here, just slightly tip back, it's going to angle and it's going to cut better. Same thing when you're pulling it towards yourself with a cable knife. You just slightly angle it away and boom, but too much, it's going to want to dive up and pull away. The one thing that's really bad that I've noticed myself personally with the cable knife is that as I get into thicker spots and have to pull harder, see how it's wanting to twist when I pull? Because all my pull leverage is right at the base of the cold knife. So as I'm pulling this top piece, if I don't have strong enough grip strength, it's going to turn. Well, when it turns, it kicks the toe or the heel of that out. And that's where you get your scratches from when you're using this tool. That's a cable knife. This one's from Pilkington. I also have another one from Pilkington that is purple, and I have a red one. And these are the quick zip knives. These are really cool to have because they change so easily. Um, so there's this one. Um, we're gonna tell. Oh, this one here is WRD's Rhino. I really like this one too. Can get into a little bit tighter areas. You do not have the actual cable, so it's a little, you gotta guide it. You hold it here and you guide it via this, but you're always pushing away. But if you notice that this is already angled to make that blade kick up as you're pulling across, so this is going to stay real close to the glass, which is going to keep that at the perfect angle um, as you're pushing it. And then you're pulling it, you just lift up on the toe of it, and it's that piece is coming back towards you. So you're pushing it away, the toe goes toward the glass. You're pulling it, the toe comes up, and it makes it easier. Now this was one of the first. This one's a Monument Tool Company. This is like a horseshoe knife. There's many different versions of it. I like these. They've got the click uh, little spring-loaded ball in there, but the same thing as the other one. If you are pulling it towards you, you lift the heel up, and if you're pushing it away, you drop the heel down, and it makes it easier to cut. And you have a lot more force. And what's nice about this one is because you have both hands, it's a lot harder for it to turn because you're forcing it. It's a lot harder for it to turn and kick out. It still will, but it's a lot harder for it to turn and kick out. So let's talk about how to use. There's plenty of different cold knives out there. Get the one you're comfortable with. Get the one you like. When I was using these a lot, and right now I only use them to stay practiced to teach with them. Because I don't care to use these anymore because my hands hurt a lot when I use them. I'll My go-to default is a wire tool. And then if that's not cutting it, then I'll switch to the cold knife and the extractor. The one thing with the cold knife you want to remember is You always start with the smallest blade and then work your way up to release. If you got a real wide section of urethane, it's going to be really hard to pull through. So what I like to do is I'll start with this 1/4 inch, then I'll go to the 1/2 inch, 3/4, then I'll go to the 1 1/4 inch, and then this one's actually a 2 inch if I need it. This works good on Tesla roofs. Very rarely do I need the 2 inch, but every now and then. But that's your last blade. Do not start with an 1 1/4 inch blade. There's a couple reasons for that. One, it's just gonna be harder to pull, even with the actual being super sharp and then tilting it the way it's supposed to. That's a lot more because you're pulling back here, and that's a lot more of a surface to guide. So it's going to want to twist and dive, and so it's going to be harder for you to because you actually bend these if you're pulling too hard because you're pulling clear up here instead of down at the actually blade. But you start small and work your way up. That'll release it, but it also, if it's too long and you don't pop the pillars out of the way, this can damage a pillar. This can damage a headliner. So you want to make sure that you're progressing and only use the length of blade you need because you'll use the small one, then you'll go to the next size, and anything that's a 1/2 inch or even this 3/4, because they'll usually go. I'll usually, because the 1/4 inch I use if there's a two-sided tape molding, like foam molding, because it releases it and lets it, gives me one less thing to cut through. But the one I usually start with the most is a 1/2 inch, and then I'll go 3/4 to 1 inch, and that's usually the only blade you need. And you'll feel when it releases, so you don't progress to the next one and actually have a spot that you could potentially damage something or get into something or release everywhere except for the corner. So then you lift up on the glass a little bit, slide a little bit longer one under, and you just nip the corners to where you're not going to get into anything on the inside. These are very effective. My friend, he's going to after his carpal tunnel surgery, he is actually going more towards the wire tool. James Thompson, he was a master with the cold knife blade. He would get things out that was super, super. He used the Ultra Whiz, the thin blades, the ultra thin, Ultra Whiz. And he would get stuff out that was naked edge and not do a single bit of damage. On the other hand, it was there were times that I got them out without scratching them, but there was a lot of times that I did happen to nick just one or two places. Not super skilled with the cold knife blade. I mean, I can get the job done without creating a bunch of damage, but he was a master with this. Myself, I could do it, but there was always that one spot where I got too far. And if it had a molding, okay. But if it didn't have a molding, then I would have to, get some touch up paint and make sure that it was, sealed off from the elements. That way it wasn't actually, going to rust or corrode or cause any other damage. But this usually use top three sides, use the extractor along the bottom. Um, Works very well if you get the molding out. If you can't get the molding out and you got to trim back the molding, sometimes it's a little harder. But they come in a bunch of different cold knife blades. You can use this on the inside. When you're taking a quarter glass out, you remove all the panels and then you and you just zip it around the inside. Doing that will cause a lot of damage. So I'd recommend using a wire tool and a quarter glass. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. And so this is the cold knife. This is the go-to for most technicians in the industry. I don't I don't think it's the best tool on the market to go for anymore because we used it because we had to back in the day. It is a quick tool once you get real proficient with it. It's a fast tool and you can just zip right through things, but it's also there's a lot of room for error, but there's a lot of room for error with the wire tool as well. The one thing for me is that this tool's a lot harder on your body. I know I'm going to catch a little bit of flack because people are going to say, "Oh, you're a pussy." Well, you know what? I might be, but I like my hands, and I started riding dirt bikes again, so I need to make sure I'm holding on to that thing. So, but cool knives. There's many different styles, brands. Just remember that you're guiding it to where the edge is up when you're pulling, and it's up when you're pushing away in the opposite direction. Other than that, make sure you're keeping them sharp. Sharp cold knife blade, obviously. Sharp tool will cut better than a dull tool. Dull tool could lead to a lot of damage. So sharpening your blades every morning. Um, These ones haven't been sharpened in a long, long time because I haven't used them. But every morning, sharpen them before your day gets started, so you don't have to do it out in the field. Um, I usually like to take a file when I was using a cold knife a lot. Uh, Sharpen it in the morning, and then right before I started my next job, I would just take a file or a sharpening stone, just hit and get some of the burrs off, and that's that. Um, it's a great tool if you use correctly. It's very efficient, and it can be used to, you know, not do as much damage as long as you're paying attention to what you're doing. You're not letting your wrist turn. You're really paying attention to what you're doing. Um, what I like to do when I'm coming down the side with a cold knife is I will actually take my foot and I'll lock it under the wheel, and then that allows me to have my body weight and my upper body strength, because I got leverage now, to actually guide it down to where, I don't go all the way to the corner, but I come down and then I go back up, and then I'll come around that bottom corner. Unless I'm using an extractor, then I'll just nip that bottom corner with the extractor from the inside looking out, like we talked about in the last tech tip. Um, I'm short, so a lot of those bigger ones, I'd cold knife, start in the center, come around the top corner, and then go down slightly while I'm still in the hole. And then I'll jump to the ground. Like I said, lock my foot underneath of the wheel, and then use my body weight and my upper body strength because I have my leg secured under. So I have a nice footing I can twist on. If anybody's done any boxing or anything, if you twist your hips, you generate a lot of force in your upper body. So if you got your foot locked under there and you're twisted into it, you've got a nice stable base. But as you're coming down and you're twisting that opposite hip, you can generate a lot more force as well if you need to guide yourself down. Kind of, you know, just kind of like you're doing a twist. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, you got it locked here, nice solid foundation. Foot's playing on the ground, stuck underneath of the tire. And so you got that nice solid foundation as you're coming down. As you're coming down and your arms are getting closer to you, and you're starting to need, I got to generate a little bit more force. I don't like to have my hand up. I like to turn my hand over so it's guiding against the cable is guiding against the glass. So I can use my hand if I need to get those last little bit. I can use my hand and just twist my wrist. But as I'm coming down, I'll start to push my back heel into the ground as I'm twisting my hip forward as I'm coming down, like I'm generating a lot of force to throw a hook. If you've ever boxed, you don't just throw the hook. You got to generate the force from the ground. So you plant that heel and you twist your hips, and you'll feel it snap and it's come down. So that's just my tech tips. Agree, disagree, use it, don't use it, but just know as long as you're being safe with it, it's a great tool.